Well, good morning and welcome. It is my great pleasure to introduce you all and welcome you to our new discussion series entitled Food for Thought. This is actually a concept that was brought forward by our honor students. The concept is to bring forward policy leaders for substantive discussions with our students, bringing in current leaders to help develop our students as the future leaders of tomorrow. So we are really pleased and honored to have as our inaugural guest discussion leader, Senator John Boozman. Senator Boozman has been central to many policy discussion matters involving environmental sustainability, global food security, and also international development. We are very pleased to have you here today, Senator. We had also scheduled to have Senator Boozman's dear friend, Dr. Rajiv Shah, the Chief Administrator of the U.S. Agency of International Development, here with us in a bipartisan discussion today. With deep regrets, Dr. Shah has been called back to Washington to address acute national issues at the bequest of President Obama. So I hope that you will all wish him Godspeed and the President in helping to address and resolve those issues to the benefit of all the world. Dr. Shah sends his regrets sincerely, and he has kindly provided a brief video to introduce this series. And he wants you to know that he would deeply appreciate a discussion with you all and has committed to come on September 4th to engage in this discussion that we had planned today. So please, if you would all mark your calendars, we will begin the planning for that henceforth at the conclusion of this event today. So Kurt, there is a video, Robbie, from Dr. Shah.
Hi, I'm Rod Shah. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you today because I was so excited to help you kick off the Food for Thought series. I want to thank Chancellor Gerhardt, Dean Veda, and so many others at the university for preparing for my visit, and I'm eager to return sometime in the near future to learn from you and talk with you. I want to particularly thank Senator Boozman. Senator Boozman has fought for the needs of the world's most vulnerable people and has supported our efforts to change the way we work to engage a greater cross-section of American society, universities, students, scientists, researchers, businesses, and faith-based organizations, all working together to achieve an amazing goal, to end hunger and end extreme poverty. I know from our experiences working with the University of Arkansas that these types of collaborations can be highly productive. Our existing collaborations have helped bring improved agricultural science to some of the farthest corners of the world and are already helping to reduce malnutrition and suffering at large scale. I know the students on campus are eager to do more with us and others, and in the future, if we are to achieve these dramatic successes, ending extreme poverty, it'll be our youth that lead the way. So thank you for pursuing this effort. I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you today. A special thank you to Senator Boozman. In the Senator, you have a very, very special leader who will continue to fight for these issues and for your opportunities to be involved. And I look forward to getting to visit with you soon. Thank you.
Senator John Boozman hails from Fort Smith, Arkansas. He played football for the Razorbacks, proudly wearing number 55, and is trained as an optometrist. Senator Boozman previously served 5 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives, where he established a reputation as a strong advocate for Arkansas and her people, particularly regarding veterans issues and infrastructure needs of the state. Senator Boozman was instrumental in positioning Arkansas for greater engagement in the global marketplace. He had worked tirelessly to bring forward the Arkansas Global World Trade Center, located in Rogers in 2007. Senator Boozman has served on the Water Resources and Conservation Subcommittee, where he worked tirelessly for water quality issues, greater water infrastructure, mitigating hazardous waste, and increasing greater water infrastructure throughout the state of Arkansas and the nation. He has facilitated interactions between Panama and Arkansas in both educational and trade through interactions with the Division of Agriculture and the University of Arkansas. He currently serves on the Senate Subcommittee for State and Financial Operations. This is a subcommittee of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and this subcommittee has jurisdiction over international development projects worldwide through the U.S. Sworn in January 2011 as Senator from the great state of Arkansas, please welcome Senator John Boozman.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for having me. I want to thank Dean Veda and Professor Rohn. You know, it's a small world. I was at Trader Joe's grocery store in Washington, standing in line with my wife, and a long line struck up a conversation with the young guy in front of me, and it happened to be his son. And so again, it's a small life, a small world. It really is a pleasure to be with you all. I wish that Dr. Shaw had been with us. He's a guy that I've gotten to know very, very well in the last few years. He's a young guy. He's 40 years old. He looks younger than that in his appearance. But here's a guy that's a medical doctor, has got a master's degree from Wharton School of Business, very talented guy, very bright guy. Most of his life, though, has been spent truly in public service. This is a guy that could go off and do lots of things with a whole lot less hassle. You can't imagine the stress that he's under now in trying to turn USAID around and go in a different direction. But he's chosen to really serve those that need it the most. And that's really my challenge to you is hopefully at the end of the day, some of you will get that bug and go the same direction. Now, you don't have to go and become head of USAID. You don't have to be a senator, this or that. In fact, I've got a number of staff here that are doing a tremendous job in being helpful in their particular way. But there's so many opportunities. I happened to be in Uganda and met the young people. Some of you are roadies for the Coney deal. And we've been real active in that. That all started from just a group of young people your age that created a film, saw a need, and it went viral. And as a result, Joseph Coney's on the run. So, you know, there's just so many opportunities, lots of problems. The answer to our problems aren't all government. Truly, the answer is you. Now, when I see you sitting out there, it reminds me when I was in school here, and I had to take music appreciation. And I was not really gifted in that regard. And so, you know, I didn't know what a scale was or anything else. So I didn't do very well at all. But you got 5 points for every graduate concert that you go to. And I literally went to probably 20 of those. And I'd hang around there about every night, and I was playing football, and it was in season. I was always beat up, you know, going into these things. And I know they wondered who this guy was, you know, that was at the harpsichord concert. But hopefully you're getting some credit today for being here, some extra credit. If not, then maybe we should do that. But since this is the first of the series, what I'd like to do is really kind of start out with a format. I just want to visit with you for just a few minutes and just kind of touch on a very brief, broad overview. What I'd like for us to do is visit back and forth. You know, you don't need a lecture from me. What I want to do is listen to your thoughts, and then also I'll be glad to answer any questions that you've got. I think the key, you know, is my dad was a master sergeant in the Air Force. I grew up in Fort Smith, and I was the first one in my family to have a college education. And so I was blessed. I came from a loving family that didn't have a lot of education, but they knew the value of education. And again, allowed it such that myself, I'm an optometrist by training. I'd really rather be introduced as an optometrist. That's one of the most respected professions in America, as opposed to being a senator. I think our approval rating now is about 13%. My brother was an ophthalmologist, probably made one B in his life, and then my sister, you know, attended the University of Arkansas, got a great education, has done very well. That's what it's all about, is turning the generations. And it doesn't matter if it's in education, it's in food security, it's all of these things, making it such the next generation has the opportunity, not only here, but in countries throughout the world. That's our challenge. And so again, that's what it's really all about. Now I've really fallen into a bunch of stuff because I'm just interested in it. I'm a co-chair of the Hunger Caucus. I'm very aware of the needs that we have not only in our country, but throughout the world. 925 million people across the globe suffer from malnutrition and hunger. The good news is, when you talk to Dr. Shaw, when you talk to people at USAID, that number has come down significantly. And we can be very, very proud of the job that the United States has played. There's a lot of different people that are involved in the hunger efforts, and I'm also a co-chair myself, and a guy named Don Payne, congressman from New Jersey. I used to tease, you know, Don Payne, who recently passed away, we lost him, but he was an African-American from New Jersey. You know, I used to tease that he was a Yankee, you know, I was from the South. We didn't have anything in common, and yet we did have in common what we wanted to do in regard, both, he was the chairman of the Africa subcommittee, I was on that committee, again, eradicating malaria, you know, coming together and doing these things where, you know, these aren't Democrat-Republican issues, these are issues of humanity. Arkansas is in a great position to be helpful. I'm on the Ag Committee also, and as you know, we're number 1, 2, or 3 in about everything, it seems like, as far as production. And so we play a vital role in producing the things that we're going to need, not only now, but to feed a hungry world. We really don't have a real problem right now with quantity. We have a distribution problem. You know, how do we get these things out to the people that need it the very most? As I said earlier, government can't solve all of our problems, but it can certainly provide a vital role. And again, we can be very, very proud of the efforts that our government's doing. You can be also very, very proud of the efforts that our NGOs are doing. Arkansas is really very, very active in Africa, in Rwanda in particular. Scott Ford, we talk about different ways that you can be helpful. Scott Ford he and his family sold the Altel business. He was in a situation where he had some time, went to Africa, felt convicted, that he needed to be helpful, got involved in the process of growing coffee. And because of his efforts, because he was a businessman, because he understood business, he didn't really understand agriculture that much, but he understood business. Through his efforts, he was able to give the people of Rwanda, those farmers, a market, an international market, as opposed to it being controlled by a very small group of people. As a result of an international market in coffee there, if you visit with the finance minister there, you visit with anybody, they will say that he single-handedly raised the GDP of that country by 1.1%, which is pretty remarkable. So again, just an Arkansas guy, an entrepreneur, went over, didn't spend a tremendous amount of money at all, just got involved and, made a huge difference. And I could go on and on, as I mentioned, and it's not, it's not just the Scott Fords. It's people like you, again, that have been just come up with an idea and brought it to fruition. Now, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you like. I'm pretty happy these days. I have a wife and 3 daughters. In fact, Kathy attended the University of Arkansas. My wife graduated here. We started dating when we were in high school. My 3 daughters are all grown, and they're all off my payroll right now. So those in the audience that are a little older, your parents also can understand that's a big deal. We had our first granddaughter about 6 months ago, so that's a neat deal also. So, what do you want to talk about?
May I take this opportunity to introduce Maggie Joe Pruitt. She's an ag communications major within the Bumpers College and will be our student moderator for questions. Maggie Joe?
Today we want to take questions from the floor, and we'll have 2 microphones going down the aisles. Just raise your hand high and I'll call you out so we can have a microphone person bring them to you. But first, I want to start, and I want to remind the audience, today's lecture is the Food for Thought lecture, so if you have questions pertaining to that, that's what we would like to hear the most. When you give your question, please stand up, state your name, hometown, and your major. And so I will start it off, and then we'll look to the audience for more questions. As Dean Veda said, I'm Maggie Joe Pruitt. I'm from Boozman, Arkansas, and I'm studying agricultural communications. And you mentioned the Hunger Caucus, that you're the co-chair of it. Can you explain what the Hunger Caucus does, what your role is, and how students who are interested in this can be involved, just as students at the University of Arkansas?
Well, the Hunger Caucus is a group of, I was actually a co-chair in the House and now a co-chair in the Senate. The caucuses are really groups of senators or groups of congressmen that come together in a common interest. And the idea is they really don't have any, any clout except for the fact that they try and bring people together, bring in the experts, that really do understand and communicate about a particular issue, in this case hunger, throughout the United States, throughout the world, bring them in and then brief staff. And as you know, maybe you don't know, but the staffs do a tremendous amount in Washington. It's kind of scary because when you look around, when you come and visit up there, they're not a whole lot older than you are. And they have tremendous responsibility. They're very bright. But really trying to make them aware, make the other members of Congress, the other senators aware of the issue. And so much of it, you'd think that a congressman or a senator or whatever would know all about everything. Well, they don't. They have their own particular issues. One of the real problems that we've got with hunger overseas is there's no constituency for it. I get a lot of letters. Some of you have written me, and I'm pretty good about reading my mail, and a lot of times I'll, write a little note in the bottom when you do that. Not very many people write to me, saying that we need to help the people in South Sudan, or this or that. And I get mail that we're going too far the other way, okay? That we need to help those here first and then worry about the rest of the world. But there's no constituency for the poorest of the poor. And so this is an effort to bring good information, explain that this is an investment, it's the right thing to do, but it's also the route that we're going with USAID and our other aid programs now is we're trying to teach them, we're giving them fishes when they need it, but more importantly, we're teaching them how to fish. But I think even more importantly, now we're through public-private partnerships, we're helping them build a big pond so they'll have lots of fishing, throughout the future. So that's really what it's all about.
Yes. Can we get the girl right here in the black and white, please?
Hi, Senator Boozman. My name is Victoria Malik. I'm from Magnolia, Arkansas, and I'm an agriculture business major. As the world's population continues to grow, going to be around an expected 9.3 billion by the year 2050, there's going to be an increasing need for higher yields. So what I want to know is, what are your feelings on GMOs, and how does our country's position on GMOs affect our relationships with those countries that are members of things such as the European Union?
Well, I personally, and again, my personal opinion is based on the science. And really, when you deal with these things, you have to take the emotion out of it, okay? You have to look at the hard science. You have to look at common sense. And when you can modify a plant such that it's more drought resistant, and as a result, take a country like Ghana, where perhaps they're using the same seed varieties that they used at the turn of the last century, and then give them a seed variety, that has been modified or whatever, when that proves to be so much more yield, that's a good deal. It makes all the sense in the world. And all of the studies that I've seen that have been done so far indicate that that's very, very safe. And so, personally, I think that's the route to go. Certainly, the country ought to have the option of doing that without being, somehow it be such that they're penalized by other countries, because they are moving in that direction. But I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and you're right. We've got, we're going to have a lot of mouths to feed in the future. We've got a lot of mouths to feed right now. We're able to do that, and a lot of it, we can be so very proud. A lot of it is because of research that's come out of the University of Arkansas. So I talked earlier about you're the solution, and don't kid yourself. If you go into that field and you're a researcher and you're figuring out, how we can get these increased yields, how we can continue to be more efficient on the farm, you're helping food security as much as anybody. You don't have to be the guy on the front line, this and that. Malaria is another huge deal that I'm kind of getting off the subject, but I'm also a co-chair of the Malaria Caucus. Malaria is a disease that hits you a couple times during the year, and it hits you during the planting season. So during that critical time, a lot of people are sick, have a recurrence, and then it hits at the harvest season. And so for a lot of different reasons, that needs to be eradicated. It's particularly hard on the young and the elderly. Many, many hundreds of thousands of people die every year from that. We've got a lot of problems in the world. It's difficult to solve the Middle East crisis and this and that. Sadly, if there were more of a constituency and we did a better job, and the United States is doing a tremendous job in this area, but if we were able to get a little bit more help, that's a problem that can be solved. We could wipe out malaria worldwide really fairly easily.
Hi, my name is Brittany Horn. I'm actually from Whitehall, Arkansas, and I'm a sociology, anthropology, and sustainability minor with my minor and majors. Yeah. I was actually one of the students that met with your office regarding the LRA disarmament and Northern Uganda Recovery Act. My question's kind of simple. Considering how very unsustainable, considering the resource extraction, the resources that are used, and the fact that it's one of the more unregulated sources, and this is a sustainability sort of lecture, why are you currently drinking out of a bottle of water?
Well, I think it's because they didn't want me to have a Marco Rubio moment where I was grasping for, those are all, I understand what you're saying, and water is a huge issue, throughout in fact, when you look at the futurists, the two things that they always put at the top of their list are energy and water. So one will put one first, and the other one, but those are the two that are always listed as first. So it is. I mean, I don't disagree with you at all in the sense, we need to be looking at these things. We need to protect our resources. But I think they wanted to keep me hydrated. So. No, like I say, I don't disagree. Those are things that we need to talk about. Now, you do have to be careful. The landfill problem is a problem. We're doing a much better job of some of the things that your packaging. We're doing a better job of. The other thing that they're doing a better job of that's really helped is, you go to the store and you get this little device, and you've got this huge package, so that it'll direct you to it. Little part, big package. So you've got all that waste in packaging. And the other problem with that is that on our trucks, when they carry this stuff, the problem is not the load weight many times, it's the bulk, getting the stuff on the truck. So you reduce the packaging, you're reducing the landfill, all of that stuff. You're also reducing the amount of truckloads that you need to take, so you're using less fuel, and you're tearing up the highways less. So there's all of this stuff works together, and these are things that we need to look at. I get a little aggravated in the sense that one thing that we don't do a very good job at all in regard to energy is conservation. Richard and I, back in the old days, because electricity was expensive and our parents didn't have anything, you turned off the lights when you left a room and things like that. We simply don't do those kind of things, and really, just in doing little things like that, we really could make a huge difference from a conservation standpoint. I have a friend, a former congressman from Montana. When he brushes his teeth, he turns on the water, he sticks his toothbrush under there, he wets it down, he turns off the water, brushes his teeth. We don't do that. I mean, the water's running and and stuff. So there's all kinds of things that we need to look at in that regard that could be very, very helpful. So, but it's a challenge.
Next
Yes, sir.
question.
Probably don't need a mic. Hi, my name is Tony Stankus, and I'm from Fayetteville by way of Boston originally. I am the librarian for animal science and poultry science, and the people who raise food animals and their products are often under assault as meat is murder or even attacked for reasons of sustainability, some which has a basis. Do you see animal agriculture being supported where appropriate and internationalized so that local produce can happen? Animal protein is probably the scarcest resource in many of these countries. It's complete. How do you feel about supporting the continued thriving of animal and poultry raising?
No, I'm very much in favor of certainly continued production in that regard, and it is a battle. There are people that don't feel like that's the route to go at all, and again, I think you have to use good science. You have to use common sense in regard to that, and certainly protein is a huge major problem in the undeveloped parts of the world, and simply not having enough of it. And a little bit goes a long way. So, and yet, there's all different. I was at a farm the other day, not too far from here, where the chickens are being raised outside. Where they go out and then they lay their eggs inside. And it's a nice concept, and it's an organic thing, and that's all great. There's room for all kinds of things, and the market, I think, comes into place. But I'm very much in favor of the, continuing the animal agriculture. We have to be, it creates problems. You have to be careful around the watersheds and things like that. And the good news is we've made tremendous progress in that regard. Again, I rely on the common sense, and I think the research that indicates that's, is a good way to go.
Thank you, Senator. I get to stay in business for a while longer.
I think in this part of the country you're safe.
John Gray, a graduate of the university.
When were you here?
68, another era.
No, I was here from 69 to 73, so
Yeah, I had 7 job offers when I got out. So, a different day to day. My question is, what are you doing to either eliminate or reduce the agricultural subsidies that are driving millions off their farms in Mexico, specifically corn and rice farmers? I know many of these people.
Well, I think the thing that's driving the problem with corn is the ethanol. And the ethanol is not subsidized by the government anymore. It's subsidized in the sense that we have this mandate of having to use so many gallons, per year in our fuel. And I'm very much against that. I think we need to get rid of it. It not only drives up the price of corn, and the idea was, you say, well, why did they ever do it in the first place? They did it in the first place to get it started, and then they were going to switch to cellulosic ethanol. Cellulosic ethanol, unlike corn, would use the byproducts that we have on the farm. Maybe planting ground that really wasn't worthy of crops that would grow switchgrass and stuff like that, using that, wood chips, things. The problem is the science behind the cellulosic ethanol is just not there yet. So we're stuck with this corn, and in using the corn, not only does it drive up the price of corn, because at least 40%, I think probably last year with the drought, closer to 50% of our corn supply was used for fuel, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because what that does makes corn go up. As corn goes up, people shift over to other grains, and it makes them go up. And it is a huge problem, not only, for what you're saying, but we have a finite amount of money in order to give to foreign aid and things like that. If the price of what you're buying is up significantly, you can't buy as much, and literally people starve to death. The other part of that, though, I do believe that right now the United States has the cheapest, safest food supply in the world. And a lot of that has to do, it has to do with the FDA doing a good job. It has to do with the research methods that we do and all of that. But it does also have to do with the fact that we do have in place, a situation where you've got an underpinning. And I think the underpinning needs to stay in place. If not, then it makes it very difficult for farmers to go to the bank and get a loan and things like that if the bank doesn't know they can't pay it back. So we do need a good underpinning. We need a good safety net. Again, it has to be common sense, and things like that. But I would argue that the safety net needs to be there. The other thing that you have with the price of corn going up and this and that, the other grains, what does that do to single moms? What does it do to people on fixed incomes? We talk about food insecurity with higher grocery prices, and they are creeping up right now. I don't know exactly how we're measuring inflation, but you all know, when you go in the store and you're buying these things, they are creeping up right now. And it really is very, very hard on our retired and people on fixed incomes.
We have two at the front.
Thank you.
Senator Boozman, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Joanna Pollock, and I'm a dietitian. I became a dietitian in the 90s because I was concerned about hunger issues, so I really appreciate the Food for Thought lecture. This is really great. And I recently graduated from the University of Arkansas with a master's in counseling, but I'm not currently a student, but I am a constituent. The question that I have for you today is really one about energy balance. We live in an age of anthropogenic climate disruption, and World Watch Institute, is telling us that grains are expected to decline by a lot by 2050, 46% for wheat alone by 2050. And we already had a student point out that population is expected to increase to 9 billion by 2050. So I'm just wondering, how do you reconcile your support for the KXL pipeline, which is projected to put 200 parts per million more carbon into the atmosphere, by combusting the tar sands of Alberta and also destroying the boreal forest?
Well, I think that's a good question, and I am very much in support of the Keystone Pipeline. Right now, we live in a fossil fuel economy. We talked earlier, you can really throttle that back. You can put carbon taxes on. You can do this or that. But again, what does that do to the single mom? What does it do to people on fixed incomes with very high energy prices? In order for us to compete at a global level, it's dependent on having cheap energy prices. If you don't have that, then you can't compete. So the other side of what you're saying is, you're going to have, instead of creating many jobs with the Keystone Pipeline, you really are going to have tremendous job loss as a result of doing that. Now, what do we need to do in that regard? We need to switch. I would like to see us switch much more to natural gas. We've got an abundance of natural gas. It's fairly clean. We can do that with our cars. You can't power a car by solar. You can't power it by wind. You can do it by battery. But when you do the science and you look at the battery production and the disposal of all that, you've got a mess, okay? So you have to work through these things, and you have to have long-range goals. The United States could throttle back unilaterally right now, and I've visited with the folks and this and that. India and China simply are not going to participate. Their attitude is, you've had your industrial revolution, we'll get serious in 200 years. If they don't cooperate, it doesn't matter, the science tells us it doesn't matter what we do as a nation, it simply doesn't make a whole lot of difference. So we can be the leader, we can, encourage others to be responsible. And it doesn't really matter, if you don't, some people buy, climate change is happening. The weather patterns are changing. The question is what's causing that? And it doesn't really matter, what's causing it. The things that you do in relation to, as I said earlier, turning the lights out, using less energy, all of those kind of things, that's good stuff, for a variety of different reasons. We need to be doing all that stuff. But I'm not a guy that feels like that we need to have the carbon taxes and this and that. Again, that would not be good for our economy, and it would cost jobs.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Olivia Hines. I'm from Conway, Arkansas, and I'm a horticulture major. I want to thank you for coming to speak with us today. Recently, you were quoted pushing Secretary of State John Kerry to approve the Keystone Pipeline. The EPA took over 1,800 samples in 2008 and 2009. They released their findings in December of 2012, stating that 56% of American streams and waterways cannot sustain life. That's a very alarming statistic, and surely to only get worse in time. Based on science, tar sands extraction is the most water-intensive process, and the toxic tailing ponds in Canada are beginning to seep into the groundwater, and not to mention the amount of spills recently that are most difficult to clean due to the nature of bitumen. So I guess my question kind of follows Joanna's with how do you reconcile this? You say you're a man based on science and long-term decisions, and this just doesn't seem logical. Thank you.
Well, again, it's just a matter of disagreement. If you poll the American public, they're overwhelmingly in support of the Keystone Pipeline. They're overwhelmingly in support of not significantly raising a carbon tax, things like that. So, the public is not supportive. It does cost jobs, and I do think that I would encourage you to look at the other side of that and look at the job loss, as a result of not going forward. One thing that is important, and this thing in Mayflower is important that's happened, with the pipeline rupture. And the Keystone Pipeline, we're talking about a brand new pipeline, and so we can do things. There's a number of pipes running throughout the country, and in order for us to have an economy, in order for the lights to come on and for you to get in your car, you've got to pipe things, or it just simply doesn't work. I think the message that we need to learn from Mayflower is that was a 65-year-old pipe, and we've really got pretty good pipe security in place right now, but we really need to relook at that and make sure that the checks that we're doing and stuff are adequate. Evidently, in that case, it wasn't adequate, but we've got a lot of aging infrastructure, not only in those kind of pipelines, but just infrastructure in general, that we do need to do a much better job in investing in.
Torrin right here, fourth row.
Good morning. My name is Ashton Dawson, and I'm from Bentonville, Arkansas, currently studying agricultural business and communications. I think we're all aware that Congress failed to pass the Farm Bill this past year. So I was just curious, with your role on the Senate Ag Committee, what are you doing to provide a safeguard for farmers and ranchers across the country?
Well, I think I think the question is a very important one. And, we talk a lot about the economy, and the name of the game is economic opportunity. And that's important for those that are employed. It's very important for you all as you get out into the workforce so that you can have a job. The way that you create a healthy economy is through certainty. Right now we have lots of uncertainty, and the Farm Bill is a good example of that. Our farmers have to know what the rules are going to be for the next 5 years. They have to know what the safety net is going to be. If not, they simply can't make decisions that they need to make. I was with a farmer not too long ago. He wants to buy a new tractor. A new tractor with row crops is well over $100,000. He's not going to do that right now because he simply doesn't know what the rules are going to be. So he doesn't buy that tractor. The implement dealership in a little town in Arkansas is not going to make that sale. In not making that sale, they're not going to take that profit, to their employees and spend it on other things, and it really does ripple through the economy. So we've got to have some certainty. We simply have to get these things done. And so the Senate's working really hard. Senator Pryor and myself are trying to prod that along. And it's interesting, when you look at the farm bills, it's not about Democrats and Republicans and this and that. It's about regional forms of agriculture. We talked about ethanol. I'd like to get rid of ethanol. There's a region of the country that's very supportive of that. And so that's where the rub comes. In southern agriculture, we irrigate, and we don't worry so much about, the sun comes and we irrigate and we put some fertilizer on there and we get a decent crop. What we worry about is the input cost changing dramatically, where the fertilizer costs go up, or the energy cost of running that pump to fertilize, change. And then you have, a situation where you can have a bad price. So it's just a matter of getting all of that sorted out. The vast majority of the Farm Bill, you think of the Farm Bill and you think, well, that's about farmers. It's $1 trillion over 10 years. It's a lot of money. Of that $1 trillion, $800 billion of that is food stamps and things like that. So only a couple $100 billion is devoted to the commodity sections. So it's just a matter of getting all that worked out. I think that the Senate is committed to doing it. I think the House is committed to doing it, but it's simply something that has to be done. I was in California talking to the ag community there last week. And you think of California and you think of Silicon Valley and you think of all of the, in relation to California, their number one industry by far is ag. And they can grow about anything out there. So the ag business is very, very important throughout the country, not only in Arkansas. So it is something that we need to get done, again, to help stimulate the economy, economic growth. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Gary Ferrier, University of Arkansas, with Fayetteville. Thank you for being here. I had the pleasure of meeting you in the past and having one of your daughters in class.
Uh-oh.
My question is,
We hope she was in class occasionally.
she was in class, she passed the class. But I'm not supposed to talk about this. Earlier you talked about how people need to make better choices, turn off the lights, things like that. Some people are trying to make better choices in terms of the foods they choose, but labeling is oftentimes confusing. So for example, on chicken, fresh doesn't mean never frozen.
Right.
Natural doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Right.
Free range for chickens means that the chickens have the option of going outside.
Right.
Whether they choose that option, who knows? So is Congress or is industry, or the two working together to do anything to clarify the confusion that consumers think they're buying something that's not necessarily what they think it is, helping people make better choices?
They are, and the agencies are working on that also, and it's confusing, and what you don't want, what I want is for this to bubble up from the producers, because you start tinkering with this or that and you create unintended consequences. But you're right, when you go in the store and you look at something and it says organic, you know, the label ought to equate to common usage. And sometimes it doesn't. You know, the organic might be in the mind of the shopper, you know, something totally different than what the regulation indicates. So that's an area that we need to do a lot of work on, and it is an area that's ongoing. It's one of those things, it's not a simple thing, and there's a lot of controversy as to how you, and there's lots of special interests, you know, scattered around that would like to see it one way or the other. Somebody approached me, we have an organic farm outside of Alma, and they're competing with overseas stuff, and they were saying, they asked me if they could, if we could look at it was a deal where the acreage of the overseas, when you took and you actually did the math, there's no way, you know, that what was shipping in and this and that matched up, you know, to the figures they were given. So, yeah, it's something that we need to work on. And hopefully with people like yourself, you know, having lots of input as to, you know, the direction that we need to go.
I think there's some questions in the back there.
Yeah.
Hello, Senator. I'm Grant Neal from Van Buren, Arkansas. I'm studying civil engineering here at the university. You touched on natural gas earlier, and you touched on ethanol, and I had a question regarding what progress is being made to replace ethanol as an alternate fuel, and what progress is being made to put natural gas into industries such as agriculture, where they use a lot of equipment as a replacement fuel because it burns so much more cleanly. Thank you.
I think in regard to natural gas, that over a period of time we're going to see a lot more being used because of these high fuel prices. And fuel prices really do make a tremendous difference. If you talk to our big box sellers, you know, the Walmarts, the Targets, if you talk to people that run the cafes, local businessmen, at about $3.50, when it reaches that point, it changes behavior. People don't, you know, they alter their driving patterns and things. At $4 a gallon, it really shuts down. And when you think about it, we're all two-wage earner families now. If you take $20, you know, $25 out of each one of ours pocket each week commuting, and some of you all are in this same, you know, the same situation, you understand it. You simply don't have any more disposable income. I always ask a lot of the people that I visit with, what's their metric for if the economy's picking up any? And if you talk to the people that have the railroads, they haul a lot of these little beads that's made in plastics. And so, you know, when the economy is picking up, they're hauling more beads and stuff. I was with somebody that had to do with the lottery, and as gas prices creep up, they sell less lottery tickets because you have a tendency, some people have a tendency to take their change and buy a lottery ticket. Well, there is no change, okay? But all of that translates to, you know, to the economy. And so it's important that we have low fuel prices. I think the natural just business aspect will make it such where the natural gas is going to be a lot more competitive. It really lends itself. It's difficult now because you can't have a natural gas car and go anywhere because there's no filling stations on the route. But for the fleet trucks, a lot, in fact, in visiting with our county judges and cities, a lot of cities are looking, buses for the schools, a lot of them are looking at making the conversion because they go out, they run their route during the day, and then they can fill up in the evening there, you know, at a central location. The Coke truck, the Frito truck, you know, all of those kind of things can do it, the FedEx trucks. So I think you're going to see conversion. Now what we've got to do is we've got to have the science, we've got to have the common sense so that the conversion doesn't cost an arm and a leg. And right now they tell me that the standards that we're using are equivalent to the standards that they use in Iraq and Afghanistan, you know, as far as the fuel tanks. Well, we probably don't need that much. You know, the standard for the gasoline tank would never meet those standards that we use. So we have to have low-cost conversion. But I think that that will happen, over a period of time. In regard to ethanol, sadly, instead of the 10% mix now that we're seeing, the administration would like to push that to 15%. And that's really a problem because ethanol is real corrosive. You can't pipe it, it's really hard to deal with. It's very, very hard on small engines and things like that. So it doesn't make a lot of sense at all.
Senator, I just wanted to explain that a number of students had to leave for class as our transition occurs. Perhaps if we take just
glad they had an excuse.
a short pause, so if people do need to go to class, please go ahead. We will have another 15 to 20 minutes or so to continue question and answers.
Oh, we're good.
So, Senator, thank you for accommodating student class scheduling needs, so if we can continue for a bit while longer.
All right, do we have more questions?
Hey, I'm Courtney Massey, and I'm from Forest City, Arkansas, and I am currently studying political science and ag business. And I kind of had a simple question, and I was just wondering, do you think farmers will ever have an allotment on the amount of water they can pump for irrigation?
Right now, farmers do have an allotment, not in Arkansas, but when you go outside of Arkansas, when you go to places like California, water's in great, very short supply. And so we're blessed. We've had a lot of, we've got a lot of aquifers, that have been able to meet our needs. We have a lot of lakes and streams, but we really do need to take care of that. So even in Arkansas, if we don't continue, and again, you all are so important in developing, best management practices here at the university, how you get by with less. It's like turning out the lights. I think the days of just using water very, very abundantly, are probably over. We're going to need to do all we can such that when we irrigate and use our water, that we take care so that we don't deplete those aquifers, which is a real problem. So it's not a problem. Well, it is a problem short term. So it is something that we really need to work at hard. Right now, in other areas of the country, for various reasons, just not having the abundance that we've had in Arkansas, they've already got a problem, and they are allocating. Last year, it was remarkable. We had areas of Arkansas that had as severe a drought as any place. And we're starting to bounce back from that. But it really showed, I think, that we take that resource for granted in Arkansas. As I mentioned, my friend, that turns the water on, sticks his toothbrush under, brushes for a while, and the water's off, turns it back on. We just take for granted an abundance here, but it is something that we need to take care of.
Torrin, there's someone in the back.
I want to thank you again for coming out and talking to all of us. So I kind of want to readdress what the professor over there was getting at with having clear information on where your food's coming from and all that. And I've had so much confusion in my life with the food system that I've decided my personal motto is know your farmer or be your farmer. And so I guess my question to you is, are you going to, and when are you going to push for local farm subsidies? Because I feel like I'm paying for, when I go to the grocery store, I feel like I'm paying for the gasoline to ship it to me as opposed to paying for the farmer to go out there and work the land. I've got a lot of friends that are getting into the local organic farming scene, starting to produce lots of local goods, fresh vegetables, nutrient-dense vegetables, but they're having a hard time getting it to a person like me who doesn't have the money to buy expensive food. So when are we going to see local food subsidies, and is that something that you feel passionate about? Thank you.
I don't think you're going to see local federal food subsidies, in the near future. What we are trying to do, and in the last Farm Bill, and I'm sure in this Farm Bill, is make it such that the locals farmers markets, are, created, and helped, which is a big deal, because if you have a market that they can rely on, then they're going to produce the stuff. People like Walmart and Target, some of those really are, to their credit, trying to go forward with programs where they're buying local produce, and putting it in the stores. So it's like anything else, if you have a reliable market, for this stuff, then more people will produce it, and that will lower the price down. So I think that's the direction that you're going to see go.
So how do we incentivize that as a government? How do we get?
Well,
how do we create that market?
yeah.
How do we create that demand?
Well,
like I said, I'm someone that's knowledgeable and wants it.
Yeah, yeah.
But don't necessarily have the money for it.
Yeah. No, his question is, how do we incentivize that? And again, I think, the government can do that through support of farmers markets, helping that program. And then two, us using our kind of the bully pulpit to encourage, the Walmarts, the Targets, to put those kind of programs in where they're buying the local produce. And the President's initiative, just of really looking at foods and trying to, say, and not his initiative, a lot of different initiatives to really focus on what we're eating, that we need to do a better job, not only in the school systems, but throughout America. And then hopefully those costs will come down, because then that becomes the normal, the normal way of doing it, where as opposed to it being kind of a novelty. Right.
Torn, I believe there's a question over there.
Hi, Senator. Thank you for coming. I'm from Conway. I'm Blake Rollins. I'm in the Agriculture and Food Law program at the University of Arkansas. And my question is I have a research funding question. And so in the future, we're going to need more food with less fuel, less land, and less water. And so what's the prospect in the next Farm Bill of shifting some money away from maybe SNAPs or the commodity programs and towards agricultural research?
You can be proud. The ag law component here has a great national reputation, and so we really do appreciate that very, very much. Again, you all can be very, very proud of that. The question is, could we get more ag research? Because we've talked today about all of the problems of feeding the people that we have now, and then looking forward 50 years with less resources, as he said, perhaps less energy, less water, less this and that, and yet we still got to feed a bunch of folks. Could we shift some of the food stamp, program, that $800 billion into ag research? And the answer is probably not, okay? The reason being is that the component of the bill is combined, where you've got the commodity stuff that directly has to do with farmers, ag research and things like that, the others there. But you have a very strong constituency for the food stamp program. And so when you start reducing it a great deal, or really reduce it much at all, for instance, in the Senate bill reduced it $4 billion out of $800 billion. Well, there's not anybody in this room that couldn't go in and, there is significant fraud, there's significant abuse in the food stamp program. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. We need to continue helping those that need to be helped, but just the system itself, is not that efficient, and it's got problems. So we could eliminate some money. And then the question is, what do you do that? Do you put it into another program to help those in need, or do you divert it to something like ag research, which long run really does help people? But probably not. Although I believe, and I have to check, I think that and you might know better than I think ag research is actually being bumped up a little bit, perhaps, in the new Farm Bill, realizing that, so there is a constituency for doing that. And that is something that needs to be protected, and it is something that really is vitally important along the lines that you're saying of, how do we create more with less, So, good question.
Yeah. Torrin, can you bring her the
Here you
microphone?
go.
Hi, my name is Meredith McKee, and I work in the Office of Study Abroad here on campus. And I want to turn this conversation specifically to USAID, and I'm sorry that Dr. Shaw couldn't be with us here today. I worked in Senegal last year and was on a project funded by USAID. And each quarter we spent a lot of time preparing extensive reports, monitoring and evaluation, quantitative and qualitative measures for USAID. And because there are a lot of students here today, I'd like to take this as a teaching opportunity and ask you to explain the relationship between congressional oversight and the international development work that USAID is doing worldwide. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Shaw is not here. One of his top hand folks is here, Alexis. Wave your hand.
I am no replacement.
And then Ferdinand also is here. He's a graduate of the Clinton School of Public Service and has just recently joined their team. But oversight is important. And we're talking about a lot of money. What is your all's budget? You have any idea?
I believe it's over $30 billion.
Okay.
But I might know better.
Well, lots of money, okay, by any standards. And certainly you do need to have oversight. The current head of USAID, Dr. Shaw, is in the process of overhauling the system. What he'd like to do is create more public-private partnerships. There was a day in Washington where literally you had a bunch of groups that kind of were, headquartered near Washington or this or that, or had kind of an in, and you wrote a check, to those groups, and then they would take and essentially take their administrative cost, and then eventually stuff would get down to the people that needed it. So what the administrator now, again, through congressional oversight, because we understood that wasn't working, he understood that wasn't working, is really putting in a series of metrics, a series of measurements. So often in government, the way that we measure things is by the amount of money that we're spending on it. Doesn't have anything to do with the outcome. We can brag and say, we're spending $30 billion on this. That's a lot of money. But again, there's no measurement as to whether or not that $30 billion or whatever it is, whatever the program, is actually doing the job that we want it to do. And so that's what he's very busy in doing and has done, is putting those metrics in place so we can measure, so we can have transparency, so we can have accountability as we go forward. And you're going to have that really with whatever enterprise you're in with government. It doesn't matter if we're dealing with the university. It doesn't matter, what section we're dealing with, because there is no money. Right now, we're running trillion-dollar deficits. The sequestration you hear a lot about, that's $85 billion. It's actually a little bit less than that this year. We're borrowing $85 billion every 28 days. We have to cut back a little bit. And then with almost a $17 trillion debt, as the interest rates tick back up, and they will, again, you can have one of your finance professors, economics professors come and talk to you about that. As they tick back, it literally gets to the point where you can't service the debt. So all of these programs, there is going to be and needs to be, much better congressional oversight. And really just, it's not a gotcha attitude. It's everybody working together to get the outcomes that we want.
Senator, I regret that we're reaching time constraints, and so I'm going to ask to wrap this up at this point.
Let's do one more.
One more question.
And I'm not choosing.
Right here.
We saved the best for last.
Well, hi,
Oh.
I'm Rachel, and I'm a University of Georgia graduate, but actually work for a nonprofit that builds school gardens and teaches kids about healthy eating. And my question's also about foreign aid, so it dovetails nicely. There's been a lot of commentary about the Food for Peace program in the news lately, and you mentioned those cash disbursements to humanitarian groups. From your perspective on the Senate Ag Committee, what is the sort of interplay between those versus direct food aid that often involve commodity surpluses abroad?
Well, I think personally you have to have both in the sense that we have hotspots and the Secretary and Alexis has been to several of those. In fact, you all were in Somalia not too long ago, places like that really, you have a lot of refugees and stuff. And so in that regard, you're going to have to give direct support. Long term, though, you want it to be, and again, the University of Arkansas, you all can play such a great role in this because when they do the studies, these are farm, the way to get people out of poverty, the way to get them employed, for the most part of these countries is to give them, some sort of an agriculture job component. And the good news is there's generally a lot of room there to grow. And so it's like I said earlier, you do have to give the fish. You want to teach others fish. Microfinance is really a huge deal that we've been real involved. Tony Marie's with me. Tony Marie helped write a microfinance bill. Who was our co-sponsor with that? Senator Bennett from Colorado. Again, giving, and these are really very small grants, maybe $250, $300 to, and a lot of them are women. Giving it to her, she's got a plan how she can do some sort of a little agricultural thing, making sure that it is a viable plan, and that works very, very well. So, teaching them, and then the bigger thing is teaching them to fish, and then at this point, I think the next step that Dr. Shaw is trying to do is helping, go create a bunch of nonprofit, non-government collaboration, and with the private sector to create a pond, some sort of an entity, so that there's lots of fish to be caught in the future. And that might be, developing a larger farm holding or this or that, where you have real sustainability going into the future. That's, I was at the Clinton School yesterday with Dr. Shaw, and the comment, and I loved it, and you all will like it too. He's closed down. How many places has he gotten out of that we?
I don't know the exact number, but his theory is that we should be putting ourselves out of business.
That's exactly right.
It's a temporary solution, and he uses South Korea as a great example. Was a recipient after the war and is now a donor helping other countries.
That's exactly right. You go back 60 years ago, South Korea had one paved road, and now it's this booming country that's doing great and is a partner in ours in giving aid. But a lot of that was accomplished through our hard work, and the United States, again, we can be very, very proud of that, in being a part of that. So that's the goal, is to get out of these countries. And Dr. Shaw has actually closed down probably 17 or 18, but a number, 22, where we don't need to be helping anymore, and then transferred those resources and beefed up in areas that we need to be. So.
I actually would like to just follow that up with a question for you, because for the students asking about foreign aid and the cost of it, I think one reason my boss has gotten along so well and shared value with the center is there is this link that we believe anyway, it's cheaper to help a lot of these populations and countries in conflict now, like Somalia, like Afghanistan, help people get into school, help women survive childbirth safely so that we can get out of the business of helping them, and that's better for our national security.
No, that's right.
The center is much more involved in national security than we are, but maybe you can explain the link between those two.
Well, we have the Arab Spring that's gone on. That in large part started, in the sense of unemployment, and really nothing to eat. Hungry people that didn't have any hope, and that were unemployed. And so that's not a good situation. And so as a result of that, that spreads to Libya, and then Libya spreads to, surrounding northern Africa states, and France gets involved, we get involved in roundabout ways. And so, it would be much better. And plus, it's the right thing to do, to help those in need. For a number of different reasons, it is something that we need to be involved with. The government can't do it all, though, not by any means. The good news is that the private sector is stepping in more and more, and that's really where I would encourage you all. And again, you don't have to go to Africa and be on the front lines, but there's so many different ways that you can be helpful. And I'd really encourage you, as you go forward, to try and figure those ways out. But if there is an answer to the problems that we have in this regard, whether it's sustainability and energy or whatever, those solutions are going to come from y'all. So I appreciate you letting me be here with you. And again, I'm going to push hard to see if you can get some credit out of this deal.
Senator, thank you very much. I have a letter to read from Chancellor Gearhart. Senator Boozman, please accept my sincere gratitude for engaging with our students today, and accept my regrets at not being able to attend today's lecture. But university business requires that I be in Monticello for a meeting of the university's Board of Trustees. I would very much have liked to have been here to greet you and listen to you discuss issues about the Hunger Caucus and awareness in combating hunger issues and international development, along with emphasizing the importance of global engagement and sustainability efforts. The University of Arkansas is committed to sustainability and has set ambitious goals for achieving carbon neutrality. Our campus welcomes the opportunity to advance the discussion of this critical topic. Please accept a warm University of Arkansas welcome and my sincere apologies that I could not be here with you today. Warmest regards, Chancellor G. David Gearhart.
Thank you.
We have a copy of the letter to present to you as well. Kurt? And also on behalf of our honors students and faculty, we'd like to present you with this token of our appreciation. This is an honors medallion. It is identical to that which is provided to each of our graduating honors students to wear at commencement and to display in this case. Thank you very much, Senator. Really appreciate your efforts in being with us today.
Thank you.